Welcome to the Structural Engineering Podcast.
We're your hosts, Zach and Max, structural engineers passionate about unraveling the complexities of our architectural wonders.
Whether you're a seasoned professional, an aspiring engineer, or simply fascinated by the science behind skyscrapers and bridges, you've come to the right place.
In each episode, we bring you insightful interviews with leading professionals.
So grab your hard hat,
or maybe your calculator,
sharpen your pencils, and get ready to explore the fascinating world of structural engineering. This is
the Structural Engineering Podcast.
We've got a unique episode this week, and I think it's one you're going to like. This is with Scott Johnson from Louisiana Pacific. Now, you may remember Scott from our talk about fire, where Zach and I learned all about the effort and concepts that go into fire testing and design. But this one's a little different. While we were at LP, we talked with Scott about his history and career path, and the depth sort of blew me away. From the military to teaching masonry to fire design of wood, I got the feeling Scott has forgot more than I will ever know. But if you're interested in learning some great career advice, and particularly how to pull the most out of your time in the engineering office, I recommend giving this episode a listen. So let's dive in. Oh, one more quick note. We've been pretty good with our every other week consistency, but I got the chance to make a career move I am very excited about, and that includes moving all of my stuff 2,300 miles west of Maine. So we'll be a little disconnected for a bit while I make this happen. But we have some really cool episodes planned, so pardon our delays, we aren't going anywhere.
So Scott, thanks for joining us on this episode. We wanted to kind of break down your career. Where did you start? How did you get into structural engineering and kind of where you are now? So if you wouldn't mind kind of walking us through that.
Well, I guess I'll go
Third grade.
Third grade?
No.
The first time or second time? No, so obviously I went to a polytechnic high school. So I basically learned a trade in high school. So I learned metal fabrication. So I didn't really I took math up to my sophomore year. I just happened to be kind of ahead in math. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have to take to graduate. And then I went to the Marines for 4 years and I'm like, I'm definitely not doing this the rest of my life. So I got out and then I'm like, what do I do now? And I'm like, well, I guess I go to college because you're supposed to go to college. And, I had the GI Bill. And so I start.
At that point, there was no interest to get back into metal fabrication like in high school?
No. I mean, I took it, I just took it in high school because, I actually enjoyed that. I found it interesting. I actually do think it actually did definitely help as a structural engineer doing structural engineering because, steel's heavy, you kind of know, how it behaves when you weld it up and stuff like that. So anyway, I got out and I'm like, what do I do? Where do I go to school? And so my buddy's like, oh, you got to go to Mount Hood Community College. So I'm like, I signed up at Mount Hood Community College and I started in Math 60, which, because I had taken math since I was a sophomore in high school. So I essentially did 2 years of math just to get to calculus to start it. 60, 65, 95, 111, 112, then I could start calculus. So essentially out of the year of school. But I think I went to like 2 terms, community college. And I said, maybe I'll give engineering a shot. And I remember I talked to one of the teachers I had. He's like, oh God, that's really hard. And I'm like, well, maybe I won't do it. So then I said, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. So I basically did, almost 2 years of math just to start what would be like the freshman year of the engineering program. So went to community college. I go for 3.5 years of community college and then I transferred into
with associates.
Yeah, I think I got an associates. That's I do. So then 3.5 years of community college, and then I transferred into Portland State as a junior, and then went to graduate in 2 years, stayed on for an extra year, and got a master's degree, and then got my first engineering job. Then the recession, 2001, basically after 9/11, the economy kind of tanked, so I got laid off, and then I went to work for the firm I worked at for maybe it was close to 15 years, maybe not quite 15 years, which was a great firm. And it was one of these firms where you don't necessarily get pigeonholed. Mm-hmm. We had really good principles that taught you, and the firm was very broad in what it did. It wasn't like they just did this. It was very diversified, which I think is one of the reasons they kind of survived the last recessions because of the when the housing stuff all went away, or the the retail stuff picked back up, schools picked back up. So did that, was doing the engineering, and then I got the opportunity to teach at Portland State.
Wow.
So I taught principles of reinforced masonry for, I think, 8 years. And it was just one of those things. It just happened to be that I was doing a lot of projects that involve masonry. And so, you kind of dig into things and you're like, oh, you kind of learn it.
Yeah.
So then I talked to the guy that used to teach it. And I'm like, if you're ever thinking of retiring, I wouldn't mind stepping in and doing this. And so I did it for like 8 years, and it was a blast. I'd love to go back to teaching and doing that again. So how I kind of transitioned into the sales part is, people come in and do lunch and learns, right? The Simpson comes in, Hilti comes in, LP comes in, they do lunch and learn. And I always go, I think they actually have a pretty cool job, and every once in a while I go talk to them when they leave. I follow them out to the parking lot and just, kind of talk. And I wasn't saying I'm looking. I was just kind of asking questions about what they did.
What kind of projects did you work on in your structural career? What did you enjoy? What types of projects did you not enjoy, or materials, and then what's like the progression of your career? You started off as a design engineer, you became a project manager, give us more depth of your actual engineering career.
Well, like most young engineers, I don't know if it's the same, check shop drawings for your first 3 months and have no idea what you're looking at.
Yeah. Did the same thing.
Yeah. So obviously you do that, and then you might start getting something where, hey, Scott, why don't you do the roof, design the beams on this roof? And actually one of the guys that I sat next to was a phenomenal mentor. He would actually, if he was busy, he would sit down with me and walk me through how to do it. But going back to, you crawl, walk, run, right? So you start off with doing beams. They might lay the framing out for you, and you do mega squared over 8, 4,000 times in your first year of your career.
So everything was hand calcs.
I did hand calcs.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's no computers yet.
Well, you could, but I had my you develop your simple equations, or your ways of doing it. S required, I required.
Yeah.
Boom. Pick the beam and done, Put everything in, your deflection and your section modulus in terms of moment, and then just figure out, what you need. So doing that, and then obviously, you kind of transition into doing the lateral part of things. And a lot of it was like just learning the code. I didn't learn the code in college.
Yeah.
Very, very limited.
Rarely a class, code being a component of any class.
Yeah. And when I came in engineering, it was the UBC was the code, but the UBC kind of had everything in there. And I think now it's trying to transition to kicks you to the ACI, AISC, the different criteria.
Do you remember when you started engineering, if you felt like you were an imposter? Did you feel like you came into it knowing a lot, or?
Oh no, I crushed it as soon as I walked in. No, of course not. You do feel, I felt like I was somewhat humble. I was a little bit older when I think I was 30 when 29 when I, got my first job. But, I don't think I had a problem with saying, I don't know. I don't know. But I also worried too, not saying I don't know too many times, but you do feel lost. Like, yeah, this is pretty overwhelming, and it's funny. It's interesting to watch, you go through it, but then you watch the engineers that come in and you see their progression.
Yeah. We get emails and people reaching out about that. And like, hey, I'm in my first month. I don't think I know anything. Is that normal, or should I leave? And it's like, totally normal. Don't worry about it.
No. And I think some of it too is having somebody good to mentor you, and I know like probably one of my flaws when I got to the, kind of rose up was not taking the time to mentor, because you get so busy and you're like, oh, I got to get this out. I got 14 RFIs waiting. I got, a bid set going out, so it's like, I just got to get it done. But really it's one of those things where if you would have took 15 minutes to explain it, you would have saved yourself 4 hours.
Teach the man to fish.
Teach the man to fish instead of just giving him the fish.
What kind of projects did you do, and what did you enjoy?
Oh God, I did a vast array of projects. I did a lot of retail, tilt and masonry construction. schools, obviously mid-rise wood construction, kind of those are the main things. And that's where obviously the masonry or masonry, if people want to call it that, where a lot of my projects were that masonry construction. But I think one of the ones that I liked and disliked at the same time were kind of like these retrofits, and I think that's actually that's where I think the skill comes in, where you can demonstrate you're a good engineer, or where I think you could find a good engineer is how they can take and put this all together. How can I take, this load, make it go up here, down here, around the block and over to the foundation. How can I make that work? And that's somewhat fun and challenging. It's also, you scratch your head a lot, going, oh God, anybody can do something new, right?
Yeah, there's some real problem solving in like a retrofit. You're starting with something that's drawn already.
Yeah, it's like I got this drag coming in. I had to put a new drag strut in, but it's part of the roof, so I have to be able to transfer this load, but I need to let it slip this way. Stuff like that. That's actually kind of the fun stuff. Figure that out.
I like the material transition you made. So you mentioned you taught some masonry stuff, and then now you're at a wood company. Is there material that you really like, or do you like this transition kind of thing that you're doing? Or I don't know, is one material call out to you as your favorite?
Well, I mean, since I work for LP, I'm going to say, oriented strand board is the bomb.
Let's say if I asked this 8 years ago,
well, I think steel. I think steel, because I think steel's pretty.
Yeah.
I mean,
and nothing works without it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's I'll sometimes go into buildings, or see something, and I go, yeah, I remember that. That's 23, 230 kips flowing through that drags are, something crazy, it's like, and how anyway, steel, I think steel is kind of you see something in steel that just
close to your heart.
It looks, there's just something about it. Obviously, and obviously when I was teaching, or, I was kind of involved with some of the, the masonry code stuff a little bit, so obviously you kind of dive into that, you kind of immerse yourself in understanding that, which is kind of like where I went. Now I've kind of immersed myself into the fire side of wood construction.
Yeah. There's definitely something nice to, if you change in your career, really diving in to a new topic again.
Yeah.
So what made you leave structural engineering?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, one of it was something different. Obviously, it was something different. Like I was saying, I'd see these guys come in, talk to them, and you hear people always say, "Oh, there's more money in sales, more money in sales," and it was like the profession, structural engineering, I think, is very undervalued. And it's like, I want it good, fast, cheap, right? I want you guys, that adage, right? You only get two, but they want all three. And I'd say, like, do you go to your surgeon? You're going to have surgery, and do you say, I need you to get this done by Tuesday?
No.
No. I mean, it's kind of like, we structural engineers seem to be the lowest lowest fee on a project, but assume, I think, a disproportionate amount of risk. So, and I always felt like we're totally undercompensated, and some of that's our own fault. Like, oh, that's a dope ass project. I want to get that one because that's a resume builder. So I'm going to feed down. You're going to feed down to get that, to put it onto your resume. And it's like, something big that you work. A project might, as it might take 2 years from start of construction to occupancy, and it's like a lot of times during that CA process, you're working for free. I mean, you're out of fee. So a lot of it was, there was compensation. I felt like, I could probably make more money, probably one of the main drivers. And then some of it was just trying something different, going after it, and it's, you guys know, it's a grind, can be a grind sometimes, and it was, when my kids were little, I coached baseball, and, baseball, that was from February to March. We played all the way through the fall. It took them like a month on summer. So I coached, so I'd have to leave, go to games, or we'd be going to tournaments. And then when we didn't have something that night, I was working late to stay caught up, so it's just like work, a big time commitment, because, you have clients, right? And, you want to keep your clients, you have to deliver, and then and then it's kind of cascading effect because it's like, okay, one of your clients calls up and it's like, can you do this? And you're like, oh man, I really can't, but I don't want
You don't
him
want
to
that
go.
to be the answer.
I don't want him to go to somebody else because I don't want him to go, oh, well, this guy will do it. And maybe I'll start using him. So there's that fear,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a really hard thing, which totally drives people to burn out, is that it's just deadline after deadline after deadline. We as an industry don't take any time to appreciate what we just did, right? We don't celebrate sending out a huge project or any project really, And I think that's something we could do better at to maybe help solve that is let's stop. Let's celebrate what we just did, right? That building is going to be there hopefully longer than any of us, right? I mean, it's a pretty amazing feat if you really think about what we do. Like you're saying, we're undervalued probably quite significantly. And I think it's because we're very lucky in the United States to not have buildings falling down, right? Consistently. And so, the cheap engineer will also keep the building up as well as the expensive engineer, right? So I think it's really hard. You're chasing those deadlines and then you're just, keep saying yes. So you keep beating your fees down or wanting to build a resume.
Yeah, I think some of it too is, it's a frustration. I mean, every job has frustration, right?
Yeah.
But I remember like one of the frustrations is like you get to a DD level, right? And you've got the stuff. Now it's just, let's just detail this out. But then stuff starts moving around and you got to go back and redo your lateral or you got to resize beams. And it's like you take one step forward, two back sometimes, or maybe it's two steps forward, one step back. And just that continual feed, that was just frustrating, especially I'm going to act like old man now, but like the Revit, the whole BIM thing, 20 years ago, you actually had to know it in your head and put it on paper.
Yeah. Now I think it also had to be really fixed, but when you put it on paper, like it wasn't moving. And now with BIM, things can move every week, just a slight tweak.
Yeah.
It automatically updates across.
Yeah. And you go back to, kind of before the computer age, if you will. And I'm not that old, but like drawings would come from the architect. They'd send them to you and you had to create your own drawings. So for them to change something required them redrawing it, sending you a physical set of drawings to put yours together.
I don't want to go back to that, but I want to go back to that.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
The mentality.
The mentality of it.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. And, the actual true blueprint, where they drew them up.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's there. It's like you just can't change because it's just too inefficient. But now it's like you could be in a model and it's like, oh, God, there's a light switch here. Let's just slide the column over. Instead of like, let's move the light switch over. I mean, it's just, that's a pretty dumb example, or extreme example, but it's like, it's too easy to do that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So how I got the job with LP was I had a project going in downtown Portland and I specified red belt. I love red belt. And I love red belt because I liked the guy that worked for him. He picked up his phone when I called and, answered my questions. It was basically back then you could send them your stuff, say, hey man, I got the school, here's the freight, the spacing I want, here's the depth. Give me the efficient system. And they would do it for you. So anyway, project I had red belt joist specified it. Well, LP kept trying to sub in their joists, into the project, which would have been fine because that happens all the time. But I was also thinking like, this dude helped me out, so I'm gonna do what I can to make sure he gets the work. But the LP joists worked, but they didn't have the LVL flange because the drawing or document said LVL flanges.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kept rejecting it. As I kept telling LP, it's like the owner thinks he's buying I-joist with LVL flange. I'm going to make sure he gets LVL flange. It's kind of like, I'm going to buy a car for you, and I told you it's going to have tinted windows, but I give you a car that doesn't have tinted windows, but you don't know.
Yeah.
But you just know the car was. So anyway, guys like, LP reps like, can I come in and talk to you? So he came in and I explained it to him. And then I started asking him questions like, what do you do? Do you like it? So we talked 10 minutes about the project, probably 50 minutes about what he does. And he's like, well, if you're interested, we have a position open for a, market development manager, for the LP flame block product. So I basically went through the interview process and I ended up getting a job with LP.
Man.
That's what kind of led to it, was just be constantly rejecting.
Sounds like me in high school.
Yeah, that's how you met your wife. Sounds like an 80s movie.
So what do you miss about engineering? And what are you happy about not having to do again?
Well, what I miss about engineering is just the puzzle, the mental challenge, how, the exercise.
Yeah.
That's what you meant. I mean, it is kind of nice to see something you go, oh, I did that building. There's that ego
Absolutely.
part of it too.
Yeah, I always tell my wife I'm very proud of it because no one knows the reason it's standing, but I do. And it's like, it's a cool, you could call it ego probably, going by, and it's like people go in that building safe and don't worry about it having any issues. And the only reason why is because, structural engineers design these buildings. And I think it's the coolest thing. Architects often have their name on the buildings from older buildings, but our names aren't anywhere.
Yeah.
And I think it's a cool thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, what I really loved about what I really loved was starting a brand new project. It's,
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about? It's like, oh, it's this clean slate. This one, it's in CA, it's just a nightmare. I just want to be done with it. And it's like, oh, something refreshing, something new. Like I could sit down, it was always nice to like sit down, cup of coffee, taking and drawing out your framing plans with a red pen or red pencil, and then doing on your calc page, going, okay, what size is this? What size is that? Doing that and just writing it down as you're going.
And you got some music playing.
Got some music playing, a little Iron Maiden, right? Capping and Iron Maiden. No, just doing that, like a clean slate, just did the roof plan, third floor plan, boom, second floor plan. And then you start going, oh my God, that wall doesn't stack. Or something. It's like, anyway, that was a little digression. But that's what I always like, was something clean, brand new, starting off with something.
Yeah.
I think every engineer probably feels that way.
I would have to agree with you. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, because, really projects, you're, God, it seemed like I was 12, 15 projects going on at the time. Yeah. Something like that, all in various stages. And, it was always nice when you got that first time to sit down and lay it out.
Yeah. How long? So you said you did, I don't know, direct structural engineering for 8 years, right? How long?
I taught for 8 years.
Oh, okay.
I did engineering ever since I got out of college.
20?
Yeah, I'm trying to do the math in my head. I'm not good with numbers. Something like that.
How long was it in your career until you were considering like looking at something else?
Oh, honestly, probably right away.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe not. Maybe 5 years into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because some people said, "Oh, you'd be good in sales," and actually, my buddies, it's more my buddies saying it, because a lot of them are in sales. Like, dude, you're an idiot. You can be making so much more money doing sales, and then the opportunity presented itself. I'd always thought about it, but never really looked at it,
Yeah.
Or pursued it, kind of thing.
Yeah, a few years really makes sense, because at first when you start engineering, it's just like, it's a lot of information coming at you. You got to do a lot of learning. Yeah, it's overwhelming, but eventually that kind of tapers off and it feels a little, I don't know, boring or just normal day to day. So you start looking for what the next opportunity would be. And yeah, I don't know when that is, but I guess a few years makes sense.
So with all those years of experience and probably working with, sure, many, many structural engineers, what do you think makes a good structural engineer?
Oh, that's a great question. Obviously, you have to have technical aptitude, but I think you have to be a communicator. Is a lot of, probably the bulk of it. I mean, you don't want to be the engineer. You kind of want to be a personable or know how to read a room kind of engineer. And that's actually, one of the things I also really liked was talking to the architects.
Mm-hmm.
Talking with the clients, talking with the contractors. I talked on the phone a ton. A ton. I mean, on speakerphone, everybody in the office can hear it. My feet kicked up on a desk, and I don't talk. I mean, I talk a little loud, but I forgot.
What makes a good structural?
Oh, well, there's a lot of things: technical aptitude,
personable,
coordinating skills, organized, and thinking outside the box, trying to be, how can I not be a commodity? How can I be, somebody that you want people calling? Oh, call Scott, call Scott. He did
Just
that.
make sure you got an hour. Because
I'm going to talk. I think some of it too. And this is, I don't know if this is worth it or not, but I always seem to get along with the contractors, the guys doing the work. And I think some of the feedback is, I guess this is this is bragging, but it's like, you give us an answer, you make a decision. So I think with that said is being decisive. A lot of people don't want to make decisions. They're like, I don't know, I need to ask somebody, it's like, just fix it per the drawings, change it to the drawings. And I think I felt more like I want to work with these guys, because I also felt they were great marketing. So if you get brought on a design build, they're brought in, they're like, hey, we want to use, this firm because we like working with them. They respond to us.
Yeah, I really wish the way the industry worked, if I could really pick. And I think it's really kind of what design build's supposed to truly be like. But you bring all the subcontractors in, right? They tell you how they're set up most efficiently. How do they want to build the building? From tying the rebar and how the cages go together with the columns or the slabs, but also like the wood framer. How does he most efficiently frame the building, and then have us, have them almost lay it out, and then have us calc how they would like to build it. To me, that seems like the most efficient way, because everyone's bought in on how it's going to go together. I would just have to imagine construction would be quicker if they were bought in completely on how it was being framed and how they were going to detail it. And, we still have our place massively there from a life safety standpoint of running things, but it's always frustrating getting to CA. They're building the building, and one of the subcontractors is like, man, I would have done it differently. It's like, God, it's frustrating to hear that.
Well, I think the big one would be like MEP. When I say design,
they're overrated.
They're overrated. Like for the design build, what to me, when I look at design build, it's the contractors on board, and maybe it's the general, and then the design team. Mm-hmm. What was really challenging was when they brought a bidder design mechanical on, during construction, because it's like, well, I need to vent it. And it's like, you can't vent it. That's that wall is only 4 feet wide. That's a shear wall. You can't knock a foot out of it for a vent. You just can't, So that was frustrating when they bring that in so late versus having it coordinated on the front end.
I think we just need to help them find someone to talk to, because they're always venting.
Ting.
There's the dad joke for you.
Yeah. No, I mean, that would be ideal though, but like a government project, you can't, because you have to bid it out, and you have to have tight documents, because the change order game.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh man, there's lots of those games.
That's a whole art form on writing those out.
Uh-huh.
And then there's a whole art form on responding back to them.
Yeah. So tell us about the transition into sales, from being a structural engineer into sales.
Yeah, that's I think engineers can be great salesmen, but I think like one of the skills that could make you a good engineer is, can you communicate to people? Can you read a room? If you're doing a presentation, you're just staring at the screen and, reading off equations, and everybody's sitting there, checking their MySpace, while you're talking. I mean, that's, you need to have a skill set. If you have that skill set, it's a simple transition into it. I did sales when I came in. I did sales, and I did for about maybe a year and a half. But with that engineering mentality that you have of problem solving, you want to dive in because you want to understand it. You want to understand the products. I kind of gained this reputation of, call Scott. For other salespeople throughout the country. Call Scott. He can explain it to you. So then my position morphed into what I had now, where I basically still do that. I'm not really selling anything. I don't sell. I don't manage people. So I actually have a pretty sweet gig. But I help, answer people's questions. I like to call them easy button,
Yeah.
It's kind of like I was saying with engineer. It's like, you want them, call Scott. It's kind of the same thing here where I triage. So people have technical questions, I answer. If I don't know, I know where to go with the answer or go get the answer. So the transition was actually it was a little rough at first, but then it worked out in the long run because having that mindset of you go and you talk to somebody, you're trying to solve the problem, right? Versus trying to sell your system. So I looked at it like, okay, here's your problem. Here's what you're up against. Here's how we could meet it,
Yeah.
instead of just saying, here's our product. So there was a little bit of a learning curve for that for me of, being more sales versus problem solving.
Yeah.
But
do you do any sales sort of training, like a specific to learn how sales are organized? And
yeah, one of the trainings we went to, you basically just ask questions.
Yeah.
You keep asking questions, and that's, and again, it's kind of like if you have a product, you don't, or a system, it's like, if they don't need it, you're not going to try to sell it to them. You have to keep asking questions to find out, okay, what's your pain points, and then say, well, you considered this, so they do teach you kind of like how to talk to people.
Yeah.
But I think some people just have that gift to do it.
Yeah.
And that would be like, if it was an engineer was looking to, go into sales, they would crush it. Everybody's going to think they're really smart. When they go, oh my God, you're so smart. Everybody's going to think you're so smart, and if you become this person, this resource, you're the value. You're demonstrating your value.
So Scott, if any of our listeners are thinking kind of like you did about maybe transitioning, what advice would you give them?
Well, I think the advice would be I think the more experience you can gain in the engineering world only adds to your value, when you go to that sales thing. So I think if someone's going to do it or is thinking about it, get some experience and then just start talking to these guys that come in, the vendors that come in and give your lunch and learns. Just kind of ask around, even if, maybe you're 2 years into it, engineering, still just talk to them, and, just kind of keep your eye out for something. But I think again, going back to the experience, I think the more experience you get, you understand more than just the engineering part, but the way construction works, you can speak to certain things. You want to be able to walk into an architect's office or an engineer's office and understand the questions they're going to ask you and then how to apply your products to it. So the more experience is good.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for sitting down with us today and walking through that. Really appreciate your time.
Hey, thank you guys.
That's it for this episode. We'll see you next time.